What if the most powerful sportswear company in the world quietly stopped believing in their own world number one? Not publicly, not with a press release, just quietly, deliberately, the way corporations do when they've already made up their mind but haven't told anyone yet. That's the story unfolding right now in women's tennis, and almost nobody is talking about it the way it deserves to be talked about. So let's change that. Aryna Sabalenka is ranked number 1 in the world. 4 Grand Slam titles. Back-to-back Australian Open wins. A US Open trophy. She is, by every measurable standard, the most dominant force in women's tennis right now. And yet, if you walked through the halls of Nike's headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon, her portrait is not the one staring back at you. Instead, the face on that wall belongs to a 20-year-old girl from the Philippines who has never won a Grand Slam. Her name is Alex. And the fact that you already feel something about that sentence, curiosity, maybe confusion, maybe even a little outrage, that's the whole story right there. Let me take you back to where this started, because to understand what Nike is doing, you need to understand who these two women actually are, and more importantly, what they represent. Aryna Sabalenka grew up in Minsk, Belarus, a country that the world has rarely welcomed with open arms. She was 6 years old when she first picked up a tennis racket, and from the beginning, the people around her could see something in her that went beyond raw talent. It wasn't just the power in her ground strokes or the venom in her serve. It was the burning inside her, the kind of hunger that only grows in people who understand that the world is not going to give them anything for free. And it didn't. She grinded through the lower levels of professional tennis, fighting for every ranking point, every sponsorship, every moment of visibility. There were dark stretches where her serve completely fell apart, double faults piling up like weights around her neck, whole seasons where she seemed to be falling backwards. Most players crack under that. Sabalenka rebuilt herself from the ground up, working with a biomechanics specialist, frame by frame, match by match, until the serve that once betrayed her became a weapon that opponents feared. She said once, with the kind of bluntness that has always been her signature, that she kept working even when everything was a disaster. She just kept believing, and that resilience became her brand. Nike saw it. When she walked into her first Grand Slam main draw at Wimbledon in 2017, she was just a teenager, barely known outside tennis circles, but she was wearing the swoosh. Not because she was famous, because Nike thought she was worth a bet. Over the next 8 years, as she climbed to the very top of the sport, that bet paid off. Nike backed her with a solo ad campaign for the 2025 Australian Open, all shattered concrete and raw energy, Nancy Sinatra playing underneath, the tagline essentially daring anyone to try to replicate her power. It was electric. It felt like a statement. It felt, for a moment, like Nike had finally, fully embraced what they had in her. But even as that ad was running, something else was already in motion on the other side of the world. Now think about this. What were you doing at 8 years old? Because at 8 years old, Alex was already a brand ambassador for Globe Telecom in the Philippines. Not because of what she had done, because of what an entire nation could already see she was going to do. She grew up in Quezon City, the daughter of a former elite swimmer and a businessman, and from the very beginning, she was being shaped into something extraordinary. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. She won the 2022 US Open Junior Singles title, becoming the first Filipino in history to win a Grand Slam title of any kind. Any kind. And then, in a single tournament in the spring of 2025, everything changed. She entered the Miami Open as a wild card, ranked 140th in the world. Do you know what wild cards usually do at major tournaments? They lose in the first round and go home. Alex did not go home. She beat players ranked inside the top 20. She marched through to the semifinals, and back in the Philippines, entire families were staying up through the night screaming at their phones. People were crying in airports. Fans were pressing their hands to their hearts watching a 20-year-old represent something that went so far beyond tennis it's hard to even put into words. She wasn't just a player anymore. She was a movement. And Nike, who had quietly been sponsoring her since 2019, was watching every second of it. So here's where it starts to get uncomfortable, because the next part of this story requires us to look at some numbers. And numbers in sport have a way of revealing truths that polite conversation tries to avoid. Aryna Sabalenka, ranked number 1 in the world, 4-time Grand Slam champion, earns approximately $8 million a year in total endorsements. That includes Nike, Wilson, and every other brand attached to her name. $8 million sounds significant until you realize that Coco Gauff, who is also 20 years old, pulls in $21 million in endorsements alone. Until you realize that Serena Williams at her peak had a Nike deal worth $55 million, and then signed another $40 million on top of that. And here is the part that serious sports business analysts have been raising in quiet rooms for years. Players from Belarus, Russia, and Eastern Europe are structurally disadvantaged in the commercial market regardless of what they do on court. The ranking does not save them. The trophies do not save them. Market size matters. Nationality matters. The politics of geography, as unfair and as uncomfortable as that is to say out loud, matters. Sabalenka knew it. And at the WTA Finals in November 2025, she said something that the tennis world laughed at but should have sat with much longer. Standing in front of cameras, she told reporters that 2026 was not going to be that special for her with Nike. She smiled. She said, "Maybe we should all message Nike on Instagram and put some pressure on, but let's wait for 2027, because that year is going to be something." People laughed. She laughed. But strip away the humor and read that again. The number 1 ranked player in women's tennis was publicly asking her fans to pressure her own sponsor into treating her better. That is not a punchline. That is a distress signal dressed up as a joke. That is an athlete who can feel the shift happening and doesn't know what else to do except get ahead of it with humor before the silence gets too loud to ignore. And while Sabalenka was saying that, while she was hinting in front of the whole tennis world that Nike had nothing planned for her in 2026, what was Nike actually doing? They were building a wall of portraits in Oregon. And one of them had Alex's face on it. In February 2026, Alex flew to Beaverton for a visit ahead of the Indian Wells and Miami Open swing. And what she found when she walked into Nike's headquarters stopped her cold. Her own portrait. Massive. Hanging in the same hallways where the images of the greatest athletes in the history of sport have always lived. She posted a photo of herself standing next to it, hands over her face, barely able to process what she was seeing. And the contrast, if you sit with it for even a moment, is breathtaking. On one side, a 27-year-old 4-time Grand Slam champion publicly hinting at being neglected by her sponsor. On the other, a 20-year-old with no Grand Slam title being literally enshrined in the brand's most sacred space. Something was shifting. Now, this is the part where the internet got involved and made everything both simpler and messier at the same time. In September 2025, a Facebook post went viral across the Philippines. It claimed that Wilson Sporting Goods had offered Alex a $45 million endorsement deal, which she had accepted, and it included a fabricated quote attributed to her about using the money to help others and strengthen the Philippines. Within hours, the post had over 100,000 likes. Tens of thousands of shares. Comment sections flooded with Filipino families celebrating, crying, tagging each other. The pride was completely and totally real. The story beneath it was completely and totally false. Fact-checkers moved quickly to debunk it. There was no deal. The quote was invented. The photo used in the post was pulled from a story about a golfer. The supposed Wilson executive in the image had actually resigned from the company 3 days earlier. But here is what nobody talks about when they discuss viral misinformation. By the time the debunks published, the story had already crossed oceans. It was on TikTok, on Instagram, inside Filipino diaspora communities in America, in the Middle East, in Europe. And even after the facts arrived, the feeling lingered. Because here is the thing, the underlying emotion wasn't wrong. Alex was rising. Brands were circling. Something big was coming. People just didn't know what shape it would take yet. And the reason they believed it so completely, so emotionally, is because they were watching something real happen in real time. A nation that had never had a tennis icon to call its own was watching one being born. Now let's talk cold logic, because Nike is not a charity and it is not in the business of sentiment. Every single decision that company makes runs through a commercial filter, and when you run Alex through that filter, the numbers are almost alarming. She is 20 years old, ranked 29th in the world as of March 2026, and still rising. She beat 3 Grand Slam champions as a wild card. Her matches don't just draw fans, they draw nations. A Sky Sports presenter said at a tennis event in London that in terms of sheer crowd pull and global appeal, Alex might already be the biggest star in women's tennis. Not Sabalenka. Not Goff. Not Swiatek. Alex. The Philippines has 110 million people. The Filipino diaspora stretches across every continent. Southeast Asia as a whole represents hundreds of millions of potential consumers who are not just watching tennis for the first time because of this girl, they are falling in love with the sport because of her. Nike sees this. Nike has always seen this. A company that spends billions on market analysis doesn't hang a portrait on a wall by accident. They don't create a custom hair tie designed around the national flower of the Philippines for Wimbledon by accident. They don't commission a limited edition shirt from a Filipino artist and release it into the market by accident. Every one of those choices was a deliberate, data-backed, long-term strategic bet. And the bet is not on the woman currently sitting at the top of the rankings. That's the uncomfortable truth. It is not about talent. Sabalenka has proven her talent across 8 years of elite competition at the very highest level. It is not about character. She is one of the most compelling, honest, and magnetic personalities in the sport. It is about markets. It is about demographics. It is about who is 20 and who is 27. It is about which story Nike wants to be telling in 2030 and which story they feel they have already told. And Sabalenka, who climbed out of nothing, who rebuilt herself from the ground up, who carried Belarus on her back through one of the most politically fraught periods in that country's history, deserves better than to become a footnote in someone else's pivot. She deserves a sponsor who puts her face on the wall. Nike hasn't officially ended their partnership with her. As of right now, she is still a Nike athlete. But what they have done quietly and systematically is begin shifting the narrative. And in the brand world, when the narrative shifts, everything eventually follows. This story is still being written. No formal announcement has been made. Alex hasn't signed some mythical $45 million deal that broke the Filipino internet. Sabalenka hasn't left. But the signals are there, and the signals are not subtle. What we are watching, right now, in real time, is a generational handover. A 20-year-old from the Philippines standing in a hallway in Oregon, staring at her own face on a wall, while the world's #1 player jokes to reporters that maybe her fans should DM her sponsor to remind them she exists. History doesn't always arrive with a trumpet and a press conference. Sometimes it just hangs quietly on a wall, waiting for the world to catch up. So here is the question I want you to sit with, and drop your honest answer in the comments right now, because I genuinely want to know what you think. Is Nike making the right call? Does a 20-year-old's commercial ceiling justify walking away from a 4-time Grand Slam champion? Or does Aryna Sabalenka deserve more loyalty than this? And should she be finding a brand that actually sees her the way she deserves to be seen? Because one thing is certain. This conversation is not over. And the next chapter is going to change everything we think we know about who gets to be the face of this sport.